What evil lurks in the dark? A question we have all asked ourselves many times. Together, we can start uncovering the truth and mystery behind the darker side of the otherworldly. And now your host of See You in the Dark, Michelle Roos.
Good evening to everyone. Again, another episode of See You in the Dark. I'd just like to take a minute just to thank all my listeners who listen every week or every other week, but also all those who had voted. I came back from Springfield, Missouri. Great ex-con. So much fun. Had a lot of paranormal activity too. I think it was a little crazy. It had me going, every once in a while. But to my amazement, I actually won first place winner for best show on the network for See You in the Dark. And I couldn't do that or actually receive something so great without all of your votes. So as we continue moving on, talking ghostly things, we've talked to people of some of the darker side of things, some people with the UFOs, Bigfoot, and we've had a little bit of everything. But tonight's guest, kind of excited. Got to meet him at Broadhead Manor, had seen things, on Facebook, some of the stuff that he's done. You might have seen him. He was seen on the 44th Annual Telly Awards, a winning series, Expedition Entity from the Paraflix Paranormal Plus Network. He's an author, filmmaker, and historian who kind of focuses on lesser known haunted locations in the American Midwest, which I absolutely love because we have spoke about this on the show of those little diamonds in the rough, kind of, you know, giving a voice to those spirits also. He has a current project focuses on the Black Hawk War of 1832 and where he's published his findings in his book Ghosts of the Black Hawk War. So I could continue reading this bio and just, I mean, there's so much about it. But how about we go ahead and just bring in my guest? I'd like to welcome Larry. How are you?
Hi, how are you?
I am wonderful. So I kind of read on your bio and, was really interested how you focus again, like we said, some of these lesser known places, not your Waverleys and your conjuring houses, but places like Broadhead Manor. I
Mhm.
mean, the first time I ever went there, I was like so in amazement because I was like, my gosh, this place has so much activity, but all different types of activity, which really blew my mind, because a lot of times everything is just kind of put like in that tunnel. Um,
Mhm.
so what got you interested in kind of focusing on that? Was it an experience or, just kind of word of mouth?
Really, i in all honesty, it came down to budget.
Oh, yeah.
Because
Okay.
you could go to Waverly Hills, you could go to all these asylums and penitentiaries, but you know how much it costs?
Oh,
It
yeah.
costs a lot. Um, a lot. So, and when I really started getting into the paranormal, it was just me and my paranormal partner, Dan. And we had a team of like 5 people, but he and I were really the serious ones. And you can't go to Waverly with just 2 people. It doesn't work out that way because then you're paying a lot of money by yourselves. So we started looking at things that would only take us an hour to drive to instead of half a day. And we found places like Broadhead Manor, who initially reached out to us long before they knew they were a haunted location. They just bought the building because they needed somewhere to put their haunted house. But as most times go, they started construction and things were starting to happen to them, and they were real confused. So by some miracle, they happened to find us on Facebook, contacted us, had us come out, and probably much like your first experience, the place was off the charts.
Yes.
and I've been coming back for years now. So, even the events that RIP has had there, sometimes it's just to hang out. Other times it's, hey, can you take the group up to the third floor? Yeah, absolutely, sure. And then I'll just go
Yep.
back to the gym
Oops.
and hang out. So,
Yeah, it was crazy because the first time, we were just doing the walkthrough, and I kept stopping. I'm going, "Is there really nuns here? What? Why am I?" And he's like, "Yep, there was nuns. There was this. There was that." And I'm just like, "Oh my goodness."
yeah,
So,
it's
and we
it's like
talk
a
about it.
hodgepodge of everything in the paranormal that just happens to be in this one 60,000 square foot building.
Yes, it is definitely a hot spot, and it actually goes to, talking to the listeners. We always talk about, you have history that's actually written or stories that from the town. And it's always, everybody thought, just like remember Farrar School, everybody thought, oh, there couldn't be nothing there because it was just a school. The same with Broadhead,
Mhm.
not realizing that, spirits, they're not driving, like you said, half days and stuff like that. They can pop in wherever the energy is, the biggest. And so you never know what you're going to run into. And we still have people that think, nope, they can't have nothing except children and teachers.
Sure,
And and it
sure.
blows my mind, but it's like, if you actually opened up, you would be able to really tell all the life that it has.
Well, that and specifically in this case of Broadhead, there there are things that existed long before man put a building there.
Absolutely.
In the case of Broadhead, there is a burial mound in the back, away from the
Yes.
building, but it's still there, and that ends up, having elementals involved in the situation. You have
Yes.
some psychics who are very heavily into the Fae. Chris Fleming, when he was there, he picked up on a lot of that stuff.
Mhm.
Got that interwoven into it. You've got the children, the janitor, the principal. You have random nuns, and then you have people like us who come into the building, and we bring hitchhikers, and now you have this random dude that has nothing to do with the building, but he likes it there. The spirits are cool, the owners are cool. So he's like, I'm just going to stay here too.
And I'm glad you said that because that is something we talk about, especially a lot of these locations that have a lot of teams that come in, individuals. We do bring stuff in there, and we kind of just drop things off without realizing, and you do start making a mix of things. And I've talked about this numerous times too, just like when I was up there, playing around at Broadhead. I kept hearing children's, speak German. And I'm
Hmm.
like, at first, I was one of those people like, no, this doesn't seem right. But I went with it and started talking German and singing songs with them. And then we started getting a lot of, things going off, everything like that. And then, of course, talking to the owner, found out, the community had a lot of Amish and things like that, and German settlers. So it was just very interesting of, not just stopping there, but to continue on to see what you get.
Absolutely. Yeah. There was a location that we did a couple episodes for in Rockford called the Tinker Swiss Cottage. Not exactly lesser known. It was on a very early episode of Ghost Hunters. It has a tie with Ghost Adventures by not allowing Ghost Adventures there. And then most recently, they had Jack Osborne there with Melissa McCartney.
Okay.
I think that's who it is. Yeah, right? Melissa McCartney.
I don't know.
Um, I can't remember off the top of my head. So it's not exactly lesser known now, but for us in Northern Illinois, it's a very known haunted location, and the location's haunted by the Tinker family. I believe there's 7 of them, a couple children running around, some of their staff. Uh, we're talking mid to late 1800s family here, and then up into the 1900s. Well, all the family decided, hey, they're going to come back and live in their house still. Well, lo and behold, during one investigation, a spirit came along, and that spirit's like, oh man, this place is really nice. I'm going to stay here too. And come to find out that the Tinker family did not like that. So not only did they not like that, they basically cordoned off this spirit, this unwanted spirit in the attic until one of the family's favorite psychics could come along and get that spirit out of the house. And in talking with that psychic and other people that worked at the building, they fully understood that it's nobody's fault the spirit came with. The spirit was just attached to somebody on a tour. That person probably had no idea the spirit was even there,
Yeah.
but you still end up bringing it with you because they're there whether you know it or not, and it could cause issues for the locations.
And we've seen that a lot in a lot of locations. And then, again, like you said earlier, a lot of these places, the land was there before any of the structures.
Oh yeah.
And a lot of people lived off that land. You think about it, not everybody had a homestead,
Right.
and so many different things came through. And especially in the Midwest, I was kind of finding out because I did one location up further north and started constantly seeing these children, and was trying to figure out what's going on with them and found out they look like orphans
Hmm.
and kept talking about it going, I keep seeing them just getting dumped off in all these locations trying to go, is this spirit tide? What's going on? Well, didn't I found out there was actually an orphan train. So
Oh.
I went down that rabbit hole. So the orphan train started on the East Coast. It went through Chicago and all that. And it
Okay.
was picking up children, of course, known prostitutes, parents dying, and it would take it all the way to California. And on its way, it would drop these, kids off in different locations, especially like, parts of the Midwest, which is really big.
Sure.
And so now I'm looking at, the train tracks and we're talking about, just drifters going back and forth, things like that. But also finding out, okay, now we just have these random children, but a lot of them were dropped off to be pretty much slaves for a lot of people, not just to have the kids.
Hmm.
And so there was a lot of anguish going on. And again, this was just something I was just would have never known. And I end up talking to some old mayors of some little towns, and they started showing the books and who ran it and all that. So it's very interesting to know that kind of stuff was happening before a lot of big homesteads, and you have a lot of that on the land too, besides just your Native Americans also.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So, very interesting, and that is like, you find all this stuff and you're like, your mind's blown,
Yeah.
but I'm guessing some of this also started your research of Black Hawk War. I mean, is that kind of what brought you into that, or?
A little bit. Number one, I started in the paranormal in roughly 2008-ish. Oh no, sorry, 2009. It was the fall winter of 2009. And in the spring of 2010, I met up with this random dude on Facebook named Dan Norvell. And he and I investigated the paranormal together for just about 14 and a half years, give or take. Almost 15 years until he retired in January. So, we're spending all this time investigating, and he brought me to the very first Black Hawk War site that I'd ever been to. Because at the time, he and I were doing almost nothing but cemeteries, just going out, seeing what we could find, seeing what we could capture, who we could talk to. So, the very first Black Hawk War site that he brought me to was called the Battle of Stillman's Run in present day Stillman Valley, Illinois. And in the book, that's a pretty heavy chapter because we've been investigating that place for over 10 years. And it's where I really started getting interested in the history of the Black Hawk War. We're talking one of the, if not the last major skirmish before the Trail of Tears really got everybody out and across the Mississippi. But it was also for us in Northern Illinois, like it was kind of Illinois' forgotten war. No one talks about the Black Hawk War. Even me, who went through a community college not that far from there, got my bachelor's degree at a university about 40 minutes from the battle site, both in history. When I went and wrote my papers about the Black Hawk War, my professor had to research the war before they could grade my paper.
Oh, wow.
So, you really can't get lesser known than that.
Yeah.
Um, And as we were talking to the spirits at the battle site, they had a lot to say in the almost 200 years of no one talking with them. And we were figuring out things that the history books really hadn't talked much about. One of the main things was, Stillman Valley, the village town, whatever it's called, the town of Stillman Valley was named after Major Isaiah Stillman. Well, it turns out through speaking with the spirits and then doing additional research, Major Stillman was a coward. And when Black Hawk's forces routed the company that was going through there, Major Stillman led the retreat. So his men had no respect for him. And we were getting all these answers from the spirits about how much they disliked him. And it's like, well, wait, this doesn't make any sense. And then you go and you find these letters from soldiers talking about how made up the major's accounts were of the battle just to make himself look good. And it's like, wow, these responses are actually tying to something that none of us actually knew about, because the major's rendition of the battle was published in a newspaper, but everybody else, it's just a letter in a book. So it really was interesting to see these different sides of a historical event that was coming not from a scholar, not from a history book, not from a YouTube video, but from the other side.
And that's so interesting because we've talked about it on here, that the other side always has things to say because they might have not been heard during life because,
Yeah.
like you said, it could have been, because of the way the ranks or anything like that. And, here you've got someone just like I had seen some that were supposedly, higher ranks in the military, or they were governors or something like that of a town mayor, but
Hmm.
behind closed doors, they were just nasty. And
Yeah.
so, the books wrote and made them look so amazing.
Oh yeah. Well, the governor of Illinois, John Reynolds, he has his autobiography where it just touts him as being this amazing governor and yada 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 yada. But the Black Hawk War, which really kicked off and was his fault, is such a small little tiny chapter compared to everything else.
Well, of
Just
course.
a little selective editing. He leaves out the fact that it was him that asked Major Stillman to leave a day early so that the Illinois militia couldn't be federalized by the US Army. Then they would no longer fall under his control as the governor. Well, when the militia, if they would have battled Black Hawk and won, who would have gotten all the praise for that battle? The governor. That would have helped his reelection campaign and all this other stuff. But unfortunately for the governor, they were routed and completely defeated, almost embarrassingly so. So then it became an issue for the governor.
Yeah.
And he really didn't like that, so he didn't talk about it a whole lot.
Oh, wow. And it's so great that, that you're actually have a book and, and explaining this because then that actually brings that story to life because of the spirits.
Yeah.
And that's very interesting because there's a lot of times, if we ask the right questions, because, just like when we do an investigation, you try to ask the questions during their timeline to try to get the answers that you're looking for.
Hmm.
And, I think if more and more people did that kind of stuff, we would be finding out more things in the paranormal than what we do. It's always the kind of same old thing.
Absolutely. It was because of the spirits that Dan and I were able to locate Stillman's campsite, which before, no one knew where it was because they didn't bother to look. Well, we wanted to learn where it was because that's number one, where the battle officially started was at the campsite. But number two, a Native American emissary was executed right in the center of camp.
Oh, holy
So,
cow.
like, that's where we want to go. That's where the gunfire started. That's where the charge started, all in the campsite. So, we asked the spirits, okay, well, what direction is the campsite in? And then, for a while we weren't really getting responses. And then after a little bit, we started going, just pointing out into the darkness, going that way, no, that way, no, that way, yes. Oh, okay, hold on. So that's north by northeast. So we kept asking the same question, trying to get them to direct that way again, or Dan would use his dowsing rods and say, point the rods in the direction of your campsite. And they would always point that same direction. Well, you start looking into the markers of the camp. It was on a hilltop in a grove of trees surrounded by prairie, and it was approximately 3 to 5 miles away from the current monument site. So you get on Google Earth, you figure out where that approximate distance is, and you look for what could be a grove of trees. Come to find out that there is a current farm that farms around this little hill with a little patch of trees at the top of it. And I remember, me and Dan were like, "There's no way it could be that easy." It's just a little over 3 miles away, um, and there's a little road that leads to it for some reason. Just a random little road that leads to the top of this hill. And we go and we check it out, and lo and behold, we start talking to the spirits there that were, yeah, this is where the camp was. And there was one video clip I have somewhere of Dan asking, what happened to the militiamen when they were caught by the Native Americans? And then the SB7 goes, scalped.
Oh.
Like, oh, okay, interesting. So the only thing we have left to do is just to metal detect it. But every time we'd contact someone that was farming the field, they wouldn't give us the owner's information. So we just haven't done it yet. But all we have to do is find one coin, one button, one buckle, anything that dates back to early 1800s. And yeah, that's our campsite now.
Yeah, we
And it
actually
all
have
came from the
someone.
spirits.
Yeah, we have someone also that we have metal detect too, to kinda help out when we're looking at stuff like that.
Mhm.
And it really helps out, you know, but trying to get a hold of owners for certain things, oh my god, it's crazy hard.
It is. And then people also don't want their stuff to be known as being haunted because they think that there's going to be a crowd of people out there all the time and they're going to tear up the fields or whatever their thought process is.
Yeah.
And I get it, but it's also like, hey, this is kind of a significant area right here. We should know about it.
Well, and it's kind of, part of history, it could be a historical marker. It could be something that nobody could go on after you figure it all out.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's kind of a benefit, too.
But it
Um,
also says that if for some reason the farmer wanted to ever plow that hill, he would never be allowed to.
Very true.
So, because out where Dan lives, it's more rural,
Yeah.
very farm community like, and there are a handful of cemeteries where the farmer just got tired of plowing around them, so they threw the stones in the ditch and they plowed over them.
What?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. There was because this was what Dan and I did. We focused on cemeteries. There's this
Yeah.
one, I believe it was called Robinson Cemetery, which again, there's almost no records of it anymore because it was destroyed over, 100 years ago almost. So everyone just called it the old Alt Road Cemetery. And it wasn't very big. It was, a dozen or two graves at most. And this farmer got tired of going around it all the time. So it didn't have a fence back then. It didn't have anything. It was just a bunch of graves and a wooden sign. And he threw the gravestones into the ditch and went right over it. And now that's his field. And the spirits are very upset.
Uh, yeah, very upset. I'm pretty sure it's totally pissed off.
Oh yeah. There was one time we were asking questions and we're like, "Hey, is there anything you'd like to say to the person that plowed over your burials here?" And I kid you not, the SB7 goes, "I'll effing kill you."
Oh.
And it's like, "Okay, time to go. We're done here. Thank you very much."
Well, and I've seen that here, especially in Iowa too. The
Mhm.
farmers, every piece that they can use, they use.
Right?
And we have stumbled upon, what probably was, a family burial site or something like that where they just shove things, and I'm like, has no one ever watched the movie Poltergeist? I mean,
Right?
seriously, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
um, but yeah, I've seen it. I've been on trails in some of the wooded areas and you just stumble upon, old little, family plots that are there.
Mhm.
And it's like, they just let everything overgrow or they've just got stuff knocked over. And I mean, it's really sad to see that that's what we all end up as,
Yes.
where if you die in the wrong place, you're just going to become either corn or soybeans.
Well,
So
and it makes you realize that you need to be very careful about where you put yourself or where
that's
your
correct.
family puts you. Because
Yeah,
if they put you in this small little cemetery where there's only 10 people there, yeah,
you're going to become corn.
you could
Um,
become corn.
we're going to take a small break. We'll be right back and we'll talk a little bit more of some of your adventures.
Sounds good.
The Unx Network presents a health and wellness spiritually based brand of hemp-derived CBD products made by Hopewell Farm in Harrogate, Tennessee. We apply our Cathara energy work with all of our plants and products. Our products made in small batches with only 2 ingredients of pure hemp, full spectrum crude oil, and coconut-derived MCT oil. Third-party lab tested for potency and legal THC levels with 6 strengths of 1 ounce oil to choose from. Know what you're buying and get what you pay for from Hopewell Farm. Applied directly to a specific area, Hopewell Farm topical salve in 1 ounce and ½ ounce sizes made with pure hemp crude oil, comfrey extract, and all natural ingredients. Find the Hopewell Farm link and coupon code on the Unx Network website at unxnetwork.com. That's unxnetwork.com.
Debbie Ziegelmeyer is an experienced diver, dive trainer, and UFO investigator who has researched sites around the world that have water-related UFO activity. We now know that even the Pentagon admits that there are unknown objects in the skies and underwater around the world. Debbie compiled an amazing book to catalog many of these sightings. The Alien Colonization of Earth's Waterways, a reference guide to UFO, USO, water-related activity, has received rave reviews by UFO researchers and the public. The book is available at Amazon.com.
While most near-death experiencers return to this plane of existence with alluring tales of their time spent in the presence of the divine, what happens when one crosses the veil into the afterlife, into the void? In the new book, Dying to Meet Them, Mindy Tautfest describes her journey to the afterlife after a devastating aneurysm, how a strange turn of events would lead her to spiritual growth, divine healing, UFO experiences, and a greater understanding of the universe. Get your copy of Dying to Meet Them today at Amazon.com or visit unxmedia.com for more information on this book and more amazing selections from Unx Media Publishing at unxmedia.com.
And welcome back. We're going to go ahead and bring my guest back on because we want to make sure that Larry gets all the time. This is so interesting. Well, because, when we do some of the stuff, to have someone else, kind of think of the same ways of doing things and trying to find those answers and give those who never had a voice now is so refreshing because
Sure.
we just have so many, teams out there or whatever, they would be. I just want to hurry up and just be on YouTube because I have an orb, and not
Right.
really having a story with it. Um,
Right.
dur-
And the way that I explain it, because I do a lot of presentations and lectures and stuff like that. There's 3 different ways to view the paranormal. And it's oversimplified. So obviously there's more than this, but this is just how I simplify it for an easy explanation. You have the science crowd, who everything has to be a figure, a number, a light, has to mean something, right? That's where your
Correct.
EMF comes in, your static electricity, and all that stuff. Then you have the spiritual crowd, where everything has to be paranormal because of I felt something, I heard something, I tasted something, whatever. You never know. And then there's where I like to be. Is I don't need the numbers, I don't need the feelings unless they can both help me tell a story. And I like telling stories. So you and I could investigate the same place together, and you might get, hey, I encountered this female spirit here, and she's having a really hard time because her husband left her with all the kids, and yada yada yada. And if that's all you do with it because you're on the spiritual side and you're moving on to the next one, I can then compile that information together with the science side, getting all these different numbers and figures and all that other stuff. And if I can tell an amazing story that makes people want to see this location, then I've done my job. I don't need to scare you. I don't need to amaze you with all this thermal and all this other really cool stuff. I just need to tell you a story that makes you want to visit there, and I'm pretty happy.
And see, that's how I am because, like I talk to a lot of people, the bad thing is I always kind of see the darker side of things. And when, we're not talking demons and all that, but,
Yeah.
the darker history of those places. And I start getting the stories, but I you get, we get the lights flashing and all that too. That's all great, but it would be great to have the story go bigger, because there's always other spirits around that
Hmm.
might not have spoke at that time but are coming forward because then it makes a bigger story, and
Right.
just like there's some places, you can go to and find out, there are ladies of the night.
Yeah.
And everybody's
Well,
like, well, that can't happen. Well, it did back then. They had a lot of them, and so,
well, I just told this story to your daughter the other day, but I was at a location with some haunted ladies of the night,
yeah,
and let me tell you, they're still working.
yes, they are. So,
They're
yes,
still
they are.
working, and I'm gonna preface this and say that I asked for it. I put my $3 on their nightstand because that's how you tell them that
Yes,
it's
absolutely.
it's time to work, and I wasn't expecting the interaction that I got. Um, but yeah, they're still
It's
there.
probably
They're
not very kind to say, but we have had it happen where people have told us haunted handies happen. And it kind
we're
of blew my
I-
mind.
I'm gonna refer to it as a haunted massage.
There you go. But
So,
no, I was at a location and it wasn't something that was in the forefront for me either. And I just kept seeing these ladies come and looking at them. I'm going, wow, there's something to them.
mhm.
So I did ask some males that were with us, would they be willing to kind of do an experiment with me? And we actually had them laying on these mattresses and putting money down. And then I'm like, ladies, we have gentlemen that just came here. Let's do this. The crazy thing is, every one of these gentlemen were saying this was an experience that was something they couldn't even explain because it was so deep. It was like almost in their soul,
Mhm.
even though you could capture and they could feel the cold and the pressure in the hands. And someone said they felt like something was kissing them, but they said there was some other type of deepness in there, they couldn't explain it. It was the most wild thing, and it kinda blew my mind the first time we did it because I was just like, "Okay, now this explains why they're here,"
Right, right,
and they had a story to tell because, there a lot of them looked really beat up and things like that, and
right,
you gotta remember, they didn't have an easy life.
right.
So,
Yes. Well, now
but
now I feel ripped off because I didn't get any kisses.
Oh, yeah, I had one guy tell me, goes, I'm trying to tell you now, you gotta remember these are the skeptics and this can't be happening. And he goes, I can feel something like it's whispering in my ear going to my cheek, like I'm getting, caressed and kissed.
Mhm.
And I'm just kind of looking at it going, God, if you only knew what she really looked like, we're not gonna go there. But
Oh, no.
yeah, it was kind of one of those, again, remember, I see them at the time of their death. So I was seeing them in that sense, but they were feeling like almost there was gonna be like a connection. And it
Sure.
was just very interesting to get all their feedback of what it was like, in that situation. It was kind of creepy at the same time, but they said it was deep
Yeah.
down in the soul, and I'm like, "Hey, at least they're doing their job right." But
Mine wasn't quite as deep. Mine was so I work with Scotty Rourke a lot, and Scotty Rourke is very convinced that I've got some juju stuff going on, some
okay.
Claire something. And I'm like, you know what? Okay. Once he's recovered from his heart surgery, which he just had today, so prayers out to him. He had a quadruple bypass. Once he's recovered, he's like, I'm gonna sit down. We're gonna work through some stuff, and we're gonna see what you got. I'm like, all right, sure, whatever. But the one thing he told me is if you get a thought and then you get a second thought, the second thought is BS. It's
Correct.
your mind trying to go, no, it's really this. The first thought was what your intuition or your spirit or whatever is trying to tell you. So my first thought was I put $3 down. I got three ladies working with me. So as I'm laying in this bed, which by the way, you make it sound like this amazing, soulful experience. My experience was the female investigator I was with, Nikki from Anik Paranormal. She treated me like a piece of meat and threw me to the wolves.
Oh,
She's just like she's doing everything she can to get these ladies to touch me, and I'm just like, all right, I'm the trigger object now. It's okay. All in good fun, but that's like how it is. Just okay. Now Larry's in the bed. Have your way with him. Like, what? Hold on, slow down. But it started with like those spider web feelings
yep.
on your arm, my arm, I guess. And I'm like, okay, this is weird. This is kind of nice. And then I felt light fingertip pressure on my face, and I'm like, am I getting a massage right now? Like, okay, this is kind of neat, but you got on the arm and then the face. That's two different locations.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, I felt like a heavier pressure, like a deeper massage on my chest and on my ribs. And I'm like, okay, what is going on now? So, it very much felt like three separate workers with me. But it didn't really get to that like deep soul level. It felt more just like a massage. And then once they were finished with the upper body, then it got inappropriate.
Yes.
Which for them,
Yes.
I'm sure was very appropriate. But for me, who by the way was recording all of this, and I
Yes.
have a very nice close up of me going, "Oh, okay, let's take it easy, ladies." So it's
Well, and we didn't know either, because like I said, the first time I ever did that,
mhm.
I acted like I was the madam. I wasn't rude,
Oh,
but I was saying, "Ladies, I need you to come in. They have just came here. They've been gone for a long time." And I had gotten, that Aldi's, those gold coins that are chocolate.
yes.
So we used those. And so I like, now you've got some gold here. Make sure you take care of these gentlemen. And I actually had
See,
four of them.
that's why they got the kisses.
Yeah, so but this guy, when I was asking, I was like, "Guys, I can see some of it, but I need you to talk to me." But one guy was like, I'm feeling pressure by, the hip area, and you could see the bed moving. And I'm
Yeah.
asking them, "Are you moving?" And he's like, no, not really." And he goes, "I'm uncomfortable, but I want to see where this goes because it was so mind blowing."
Yes.
And it
Yes.
was it because you're like, I know I shouldn't be doing this, but at the same time, I need to know if it's real.
Yes.
And it was really cool because they had the fleur and everything, and you could see the cold body on it and all that. So that was like one of the first real thing that I ever tried, and I'm like, okay, this makes sense. So kind of role playing that whole thing, and
hmm
I mean, it was, interesting, but at the same time, I felt a little weird, like, "Should I really be watching this?" Because I'm like,
Well, and you could watch it in a whole different way too.
Yes, and that's why I'm like, "Okay, we got the equipment going, but I'm kind of embarrassed now," but, at the
Right.
same time but people forget those ladies are out there in a lot of locations too.
Yes.
And,
Yes.
and so sometimes when they say, "Well, I'm being touched somewhere I'm not supposed to," well, let's kinda see what is touching you, so
Right. Right. And yeah, I've been doing this for, give or take 15 years, and I've been touched. I've been bitten by a spirit. I've been scratched. I've been punched. I've been grabbed on the shoulders by the janitor at Broadhead. You know, I haven't been touched in this way before, so that was a very unique experience. We'll just put it that way.
That would be an interesting book.
Well, it's
The
also going to be
Ladies
an
of the
interesting
Night.
video. Yeah,
Yeah, because I think
it's
we've got
all
the
on video.
videos too. Yeah, we had one guy. We caught him on video, and he was like, "Guys, there's stuff going on down here," and he kept going over, like in a circle above it. I'm like, "Yeah, okay, we understand. It's all good. It's all good,"
Right,
you know.
right.
So, um, but
One
yeah,
of the owner for it's Baraboo Inn, old Baraboo Inn in Baraboo,
okay.
Wisconsin. The owner would say, like, gentlemen, when you're up in the brothel, you need to be careful of zippers because the ladies will unzip your zipper. And I'm sitting here laying in this bed like, please don't unzip my zipper. Please don't unzip my zipper. So like every like couple minutes I'd like poke my finger, be like, nope, okay, still zipped. Nope, still zipped. Okay. Because that would be awkward. But
Oh yeah.
ooh, yeah, it was a thing.
It was, yeah, I've never gotten to go there yet. I've always wanted to get up there and to go see it because I've heard some great stories that, of evidence and things from that place.
It is a wild place. It definitely wouldn't fall under lesser known, that's for sure.
Yeah,
But at the same time, it's not like super investigated. You know what I mean?
yeah.
They do their events on Saturdays during the season, which I did one last weekend, and then I have a bigger one in February that I'm doing with them. But for some reason, just not a lot of people do the overnights, so it's not oversaturated,
Oh, that's nice.
and I feel like that's really great because you could still discover the spirits, and learn their stories as you go because not everybody knows the stories.
Nice, nice. So you've been doing this for a long time and you've always looked for the stories on it. Was there ever a place that you went and you're just like, okay, nothing actually makes sense here? I mean, it's just like a puzzle that's missing a lot of pieces.
Well, really, that was Broadhead in the beginning.
Okay.
Just because you've been there.
Yeah.
Every floor is its own character,
Yep.
and then you have individual characters that weave between the floors.
Yes.
So it's like, wait, who am I talking to now? Where did you come from? Oh, he just walked into the room from the hallway. What? Okay, let's focus on this person. Oh, and he's gone. This one's back now. Okay. There's so many spirits in and out of the rooms, and if you investigate with Bill, they all flock to Bill.
Yes.
So, and it becomes really hard because they all want to talk to Bill, and it's just like, okay, one at a time, please. It took quite a while to really narrow things down for Broadhead, and one of the first things we told Bill was after our first investigation, we said, hey, listen, you need to find at least 5 other teams and get them to investigate here to see if they can corroborate everything that we caught. Because once you've gotten 5, 6, 7, 8 teams that all say the same thing, well, then it's not just our experience, it's far more likely to be the actual thing that's going on. And through some of those teams, Bill was able to learn a lot, and a lot of that information was passed on to me, to where now I've got a really good handle for the building. But in the beginning, it was like walking into a tornado.
Yeah, I still kind of feel that way every once in a
Yeah.
while because it's like, I recognized a couple here and there. Then all of a sudden, the last time we went, it was like, oh my God, there's like new people here. What's going on?
Yeah.
It, and part of it, some of it, I felt like they were coming from like a nursing home, and I'm like,
So
oh, I'm like, what's going on? I didn't see you before.
yeah, so with that, I suspect that's because the building's a safe space.
I think
Um,
so.
and this kind of goes back into why spirits stay, when they pass on. You can pass over, cross over, and then come back and elect to stay somewhere. That's what the Tinkers did for their cottage. They passed on, crossed over, and then now they live in their cottage as ghosts, spirits. So I think that's happening to Broadhead too. You had a farming community where the only time these kids didn't work in the fields And the only time they saw their friends was when they were at Broadhead Middle, or when it was the elementary, or when it was the high, or all ages, or whatever version of it was. That was the only time they got to see their friends. Otherwise, they're right back on the farm again. And then as they got older, it's possible that they really looked back on that time when they were younger and really appreciated it. So that when it came time for them to pass on, they decided that they want to go back to the school. Well, now you have Bill, who's owned the building for, I want to say, every bit of 5 or 6 years now.
I believe
Um,
so.
the people that used to go to that school, they know Bill. They know how well he's taking care of the building. They know about the spirits. They know about who's there. When you cross over, why wouldn't you want to go back? You know it's being taken care of.
Yeah.
So you might have these people from the nursing home that have decided, I'm going to cross over, but I'm going back to Broadhead Middle. And
Yeah.
they come back and they still look like fresh out of the nursing home, but it's their safe space. That's where they want to be now. And it just adds to the story of not only the building, but the story of all the spirits there and how they interact with each other.
And that's true because I did notice that, I mean, the janitor, well, it just depends on what mood he's in.
Well,
Um,
and people like me have a little bit easier time than people like you.
yeah.
He's very he's a stickler. The only reason I got grabbed is because one of our female investigators started asking questions, and he got tired of that very fast. So, we had to leave. But any other time that I've been there where it was just me asking questions or another man were asking questions, we were talking for 10 minutes plus and had no problems at all. But once a female investigator jumped in, done, leave, go now.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, John. So, he has his moments.
Oh, yeah. And like I said, I'm very respectful of that. I go down there with some people and then I just go, okay, it's time for me to leave,
Sure.
and kind of leave it at that. I don't, push that boundary or anything like that because it's kind of like, okay, he's pretty much been very loud and verbal saying, get out.
Well,
So,
and from
in
personal
in his
experience,
words,
he'll also grab you too. And
yeah,
it doesn't feel good. It feels very staticky and electricy, and it makes all the hair on your body stand up. And you go, I don't like this. We need to
yep.
go.
And I noticed that kind of feeling going around that little corner area. You when you're in there with the boilers and all that, and you go around the little corner.
The little mini
That's
tunnel.
yeah,
Yeah,
that is where I don't feel safe there. I guess that would be what I would say. It was
sure,
almost like, okay, this is not a good place for me.
sure.
And so I always try to stay out of that spot because it was almost like I'm getting those red flags. Yeah, this is not where you need to be. So,
So the boiler maintenance area as a whole is his domain, right?
yeah,
But he has ceded the boiler room to Bill to allow for investigations. You go back into that tunnel, that's the maintenance area. That's his workshop. That's his spot. So it would make sense that as you go through that tunnel, you're not feeling too great because you're crossing the threshold of the area that he's allowing you to be in and going to a spot where he's like, "Hey, wait a minute, you're not supposed to be here."
yeah,
That's like that sump pump room off to the side of the boilers.
yes,
Even I, who've been there for forever, can't go in that room. Bill's the only one because that's the threshold. He says no one can go in here but Bill because he doesn't have a choice about Bill. But everybody else, no one's allowed in there.
yeah.
But the main room, anyone can go in there. Just be careful about how you speak to him because it'll end fast.
Yeah, I think Bill was telling me, was it Rob that was there and something was
Ah,
said? Yeah.
so it was the room off to the side of the boiler room.
Yes.
You go up the little half staircase into that side room,
Mhm.
and there's a room outside of that. I think it's a storage room or something like that. But Rob was in there during the very first Paraflix investigation. It was Rob and Patty and Natalie, and like 30 people were there. And I somehow managed to turn 7 different camera angles into this documentary, the first 2 floors. In this video, Rob upsets the janitor, and the janitor throws him against the wall by the neck and by the arm and has him pinned against the wall like a flag. Um, and like you could hear Rob's throat like kind of get all gravelly, like he's being choked.
Yeah.
He's like, "Get off of me!" He's struggling to speak, and you can see him pinned against the wall, and um, he upset the janitor. Well, at the time that had happened, another investigator was almost pushed down the stairs in the concrete stairs in that room. Well, come to find out that those two events were correlated. That
Okay.
one happened after the other. And I believe it was Michaela was pushed down the stairs, and then Rob was thrown against the wall.
Oh, wow.
Bill knows for sure, but
Yeah.
yeah, the janitor has a lot of energy, and he's not afraid to use it. So respect is the key to that game.
Oh, yeah, and like I said, when we talk residual intelligence and energy-based things, especially at Broadhead, there are so many of those spirits that have
Yeah.
so much energy that they can be very physical.
Oh yeah.
And it was really wild, the first couple times because it was kind of just navigating through that of, okay, is this spirit or is this real person? Which,
Hmm.
you're like, okay, this has got a lot of power. And the only other place I ever felt that kind of power was when I was at Waverly,
Sure.
and it was on the bottom floor where, you were constantly going, okay, what am I seeing? Is this real? And when I got punched, I've never felt a punch like that. I mean, it knocked me over.
Yeah.
And I'm like, when spirits have that kind of energy, with people running around with those cameras trying to provoke,
Hmm.
they don't realize what can actually happen.
Now, I do want to say this though. We're talking about the janitor having this energy and being able to do things to people. I in no way am implying the janitor's evil
No,
or demonic or a dark. He's just
no,
a jerk. He's a jerk,
he is a jerk, but
and that's
he's
it.
been there long enough and he knows how to use the energy that's around him.
Yes,
Like that. So
but not a
there's
demon.
nothing, not a demon, absolutely
No,
not a demon.
no,
No.
just a cranky old dude.
Yeah.
And the principal upstairs on the second floor is the same way. He's not evil. He's not darkness incarnate. He's just a cranky dude, and he'll make you throw up.
Yes, he will if he's done with you. When we stayed there, we were being loud because that you sleep in that office area, right?
Yep.
And you could just start feeling it just coming in the room like, we're about to get in trouble.
Uh
And when
huh.
I mean get in trouble, it's just like if you got to remember back in those days, the principals, you were terrified of them because you didn't never want to
Yep.
see one, no matter what. And
Hmm.
it's that kind of feeling, you feel like that little kid about to, you know, hear some words from the principal for sure. And
Oh yeah.
it was just funny because we were acting like fools. And of
Right.
course, just laughing amongst ourselves to, jokes and giggling. And yeah, then all of a sudden we're like, yeah, this doesn't feel right. So,
You were in his office, so.
yep.
But I was there a couple weeks ago with Josh Purvis, Mike Gagliano, Jenny Davis, and we were showing Josh and Mike the building, and Bill was talking about how when we filmed our telly episode there, one of our investigators, Jenny Coles, the SB7 had this weird response of "I broke the woman," and then for the next like 5 or 6 minutes, like she checks out mentally, her eyes glaze over, she's gone. And she almost passed out. She almost smashed her face on the entertainment center. It was pretty bad.
Oh,
Um, so Jenny Davis, after Bill tells the story, Jenny Davis goes, "Are you going to break me too?" To the principal, to Mr. Fiskerer. And lo and behold, a few minutes later, not only does she feel nauseous, but she runs to the bathroom and throws up for about 3 minutes straight.
oh, jeez.
So don't challenge the strong, cranky ones.
No, no. And again, like Larry said, they're not demons. They're
No,
not negative energy. They're
no,
just holding their same ground as they did when they were alive.
yeah,
Just because their spirit does not mean the principal doesn't have his power like he did when he was alive.
right. He's
And
just a jerk now.
he's just a jerk. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
There was a
But
session I did upstairs with your daughter actually, a couple weeks ago when they were there.
yeah.
And it was an hour-long Estes, which for me, Estes isn't a big deal. I could do it all night long. But the teenagers upstairs were a little inappropriate. The boys were inappropriate with her, and Principal Eck came in and yelled at them, and then sent them into the hallway. All through the Estes. I'm listening to this and I'm like, what is going on right now? Like I'm spirits are arguing with each other. You have this very deep, loud voice yelling at the kids, and I'm like, I don't I'm having a hard time following this, and I'm the only one who could hear it. You don't mess with the principals there. Even the
No.
spirits don't mess with them. They're like, oh, I'm in trouble. Crap.
Yep, they
I
still
did it.
understand all that. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, we're getting close to the end of the show. I could
This show
talk for
flew by.
another hour. Yeah, it flew by. I would really love to have you come back on and
Sure.
talk a little more about some of, different locations, but also, giving that, the spirits their voice, and which you have kind of explained
Sure.
that, things like that aren't all demonic or
No,
negative.
no.
So I greatly appreciate you coming on. I want to
Sure.
thank everybody who tuned in tonight. And until next time, I will see you in the dark.